Hey, Dark Friends. Today I wanted to talk about one of our sponsors, Roy Casagranda. He sent me his book. The name of the book is The Blood Throne of Kyria, and I wanted to tell you about it because I think it's an amazing historical fiction. It's the story of Artemisa, who's from Kyria, and her journey to basically take the throne and her determination and life story. It was really good. And, this is something that needed to be written, and it's historical fiction about a female hero, which is something we don't get nearly enough of.
Especially from this era and place and time in history.
Definitely.
It's not a story you really ever get to read.
No, and it's really well placed in terms of very early human history, but with facts. It's something where we don't know a lot about what was going on, except for a few very specific books. And so he took what was basically the outline of a story and really fleshed it out. I wanted to spend more time with these characters. I really wanted to sit with them for a while and feel what they're feeling because they're really well-written characters. And it gives you a place in time. She's journeying to the Hanging Gardens. She's journeying to Egypt that I don't feel like I always get from just straight fiction.
This sounds really interesting, and I like the idea of a book based on actual events. It's kind of filled in for us.
A loose basing because, of course, based on the writings of Herodotus. Right? And we know that Herodotus lied a lot and exaggerated a lot for his own political gains.
Sure. There's a lot of debate amongst modern historians about whether or not Herodotus was a historian or if he was just a storyteller. Which, I suppose that's what a historian is, but...
There's a nice little dig in the book where she writes down all her notes from her journey, and then Herodotus is like, thank you for that. I'll take those and publish them and take credit for it. And the men around her are basically ignoring her opinions and taking credit for everything that's going on in her life. But at the same time, she's able to, well, I don't want to spoil it, but it's called Blood Throne for a reason. Check it out. It's really cool. It's a cool story about some great characters, and he brings them to life. Go out and buy it. You can find it on Amazon. It's been found in Powell's here in Portland. So, you may want to check your bookstore. You can get it on Kindle. And if you do buy it, let them know that you heard it here.
Check it out.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick. We are here tonight to talk about Chapter 21 of The Shadow Rising, Into the Heart, and our symbol is the dragon banner.
Sure, the dragon from the dragon banner.
Terran nobility filled the great vaulted chamber with its huge, polished red stone columns, 10 feet thick, rising into shadowed heights above golden lamps hanging on golden chains. The high lords and ladies were arrayed in a thick hollow circle under the great dome at the chamber's heart, with the lesser nobles ranked behind, row on row back, into the forest of columns, all in their best velvets and silks and laces, wide sleeves and ruffed collars and peaked hats, all murmuring uneasily, so the towering ceiling echoed the sounds of nervous geese. Only the High Lords themselves had ever before been bidden to this place, called the Heart of the Stone, and they had come only 4 times a year, at the twin demands of law and custom. They came now, all who were not out in the countryside somewhere, at the summons of their new lord, the maker of law and breaker of custom. The packed crowd gave way before Moraine as they saw who she was, so she and Egwene moved in a pocket of open space. Lan's absence irritated Moraine. It was not like the man to vanish when she had need of him. His way, usually, was to watch over her, as if she could not fend for herself without a guardian. Had she not been able to feel the bond, linking them, and known he could not be very far from the stone, she might have been worried. He fought the strings Nynaeve was tying to him as hard as he ever fought Trollocs in the Blight. But much as he might deny it, the young woman had bound him as tightly as she herself did, though, in other ways. He might as well try tearing at steel with his hands at those ties. She was not jealous, exactly, but Lan had been her sword arm, her shield, and companion for too many years for her to give him up lightly. I have done what had to be done there, She will have him, if I die, and not before. Where is the man? What is he doing? One red-gowned, lace-ruffed woman, a horse-faced lady of the land called Litha, drew her skirts away a bit too assiduously, and Moraine looked at her, merely looked, without slowing her step, but the woman shuddered and dropped her eyes. Moraine nodded to herself. She could accept that these people hated Aes Sedai, but she would not endure open rudeness on top of veiled slights. Besides, the rest shied back another step after seeing Litha face down. "Are you certain he said nothing of what he means to announce?" she asked quietly. In this gabble, no one 3 paces away could have made out a word. The Terrans kept about that distance now. She did not like being overheard. "Nothing," Egwene said just as softly. She sounded as irritated as Moraine felt.
I love getting into Moraine's head. This is a great POV from her, the whole chapter.
Kind of a rare chapter. There aren't that many Moraine point of view chapters.
There's really not. And so there's a lot to talk about in here because, well, one, there's a lot of things she actually gets wrong looking through her POV. And then there's just a lot of other, like, we actually see what she thinks and what she knows, which is rare.
There are a thing or two that are certifiably wrong. Now,
or just things she doesn't know.
I can't remember it all exactly. I'm looking forward to going through it with you. But there were a couple of times, at least for one thing, that she, like, I was going to say openly disagreed, but she disagrees with Tom Maryland's opinions in certain areas.
Right.
About certain subjects. And I thought that was interesting because I think of Tom as always correct in these matters. He's just very, very good at this, right? Like, this is what he's really, truly good at. But it also makes me question Tom a little bit because we know that Moraine is also excellent at this.
I think she calls it that Tom has a blind spot when it comes to women.
That wouldn't surprise me a lot. But at the same time, it also wouldn't surprise me a ton if Moraine was wrong once or twice.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And Rand does end up handling her. She thinks that Tom missed with that one, and then Rand sends her off to Cairhien anyway. Although she still thinks that's a mistake. But
Rand sends Moraine off to Cairhien?
No, he sends the Lady Altima.
Oh, yes.
So what do you think Lan's doing now? She thinks a couple of times, like, the fact that he's not there is annoying her. And she's not jealous, but, like, what is he doing? Where is he?
He's talking to Nynaeve.
Oh, I thought he was...
He's making out with Nynaeve right now.
I thought he was with Juilin Sandar, because Nynaeve is off on the boat when...
Oh, you're right.
When Rand is about to plunge the sword into the stone, and she's on the boat with Juilin Sandar. So my assumption is Lan is off talking to him, sending him...
That's the sequence of events. He goes and talks to Nynaeve. They have the romantic scene that John did an excellent job editing in the last episode. I'm mildly embarrassed, but also kind of flattered at the same time. I'm not sure how I feel about that. But because it makes me into Lan, which is, I don't know about that. But
it's not just, it's the same way that, like, Lan. When Michael Kramer is reading Lan, that's Lan talking. It's just Michael Kramer's voice.
Sure.
Same thing.
But the point was he goes and talks to Nynaeve, and then he leaves, and then he goes and talks to Juilin, and then he rejoins Moraine. So you're probably right. He must be either going to Juilin now or talking to Juilin, because in about...
Got like 15 minutes.
If I were to try to estimate the time, a matter of minutes, the gong... The stone is rung like a gong when Rand slams Kalendor into the floor.
That's our synchronization moment between all of these various timelines.
Yeah.
And so we've seen that Juilin Sandar is there on the ship when the gong rings.
Yes.
Or shortly thereafter. I think it might even be shortly thereafter. So let's assume...
No, he's there when the gong rings.
Okay.
So, yes. I would say that if it's 15 minutes to when the gong rings, or a little more, then
Lan's either on his way back or currently
negotiating. When Juilin is on the ship, he said, "A man named Lan approached me and told me this not a half an hour gone." So Juilin just throws a bunch of shit on his back and runs to the ship to make it. And when he gets on, the gong is rung. So
the gong being the entire fortress.
Lan is threatening him right now. Because what Julian says on the ship that he said that if I fail, well, let's just say I'll drown myself rather than go back to Tyr.
Yeah, if Lan gets in your face, that's pretty much you're like, well, I'd rather drown myself than deal with his wrath. That's for damn sure. Lan is dangerous.
And drowning only takes minutes. So
yeah, I hear it's actually
there's a
fairly
clearly
pleasant
good
way to
option
die.
here. Yeah.
It's like there's that euphoria as your brain loses all traces of oxygen.
After that little intro I just read, there is a good long conversation between Egwene and Moraine that is interesting. There's a couple of fun tidbits.
I like that Egwene's not quite as easily manipulatable here. And Moraine's like, oh, she's getting a little too calcified a little too early. And we just see like how quickly she becomes the Armelin seat and totally unmovable. She kills a woman just because of the force of her stubbornness. She kills one of the Forsaken that way.
Oh.
With the force of her will, yeah. And so that's sort of what I see is like that hardening and calcifying and just like the force of her will is already starting to show. And Moraine's like, this is way too early to be dealing with this shit. You should be uncertain and doing what I say for years.
Moraine has a quote about it in a bit. It's in her own head. She doesn't say it out loud, but it's something like she needs to be molded before she's hardened.
Yeah, I really like that quote.
But she's already hard. That's what Moraine's kind of implying. We see that with all the Two Rivers characters, really. Nynaeve is like the hardest hewn thing in the world. And, Rand, Perrin, and Matt are all hard in their same way. And now I'm using air quotes because, I might not think of Matt as a hard man. He's somehow able to constantly avoid Moraine's spies. He can't be talked into doing anything against his will. He's just like all the others. He just has his own personality quirks.
Yeah, well, and I think they've all had to grow up way too fast. They've all gone from being what was essentially children in a town where they could depend on their elders to basically keep things safe to a point where they have to depend on themselves. And so there's no longer any way for them to simply let adults take over. They just grew up. They grew up, and
I mean, they are adults.
And that's their, well, they're on that verge, right? Of like,
they may be young, but
they're young adults. And exactly when people go from like being children to adults can happen because of circumstances.
Is Egwene 18 now?
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to highlight, Moraine says to Egwene, you should bring him to confide in you. He needs an attentive ear. And Egwene knows that what Moraine actually wants is for Egwene to listen to Rand because he will see her as a non-threatening character and then she can report back.
Yeah, she wants basically a spy.
So what Egwene says is, he will not confide in anyone, Moraine. He hides his pains and hopes he can deal with them before anyone notices.
She's pretty angry here, and Moraine thinks that it's about Elaine, but I don't think it has anything to do with Elaine. I mean, Egwene has totally accepted that.
They conspired together
to
set that whole
thing
romantic scene up. Yeah.
So what is Egwene actually angry about in this scene?
I think that Rand won't accept help. And I think that's what she's angry about.
That he's not confiding in anybody?
Yes.
So that was one of the things that I thought Moraine was wrong about. I was like, that's just flat out wrong. That is not why Egwene is angry.
And Moraine does, as we were kind of making this point before, because she underestimates the Emenfielders.
Sure. And she actually thinks that here a little bit, that she underestimated the other two Ta'Viren. Underestimated the significance of having three Ta'Viren in one place. That's where this quote actually comes in here.
Yeah.
So the next thing I have is the fact that Tom is gone,
muttering
about Tanchico.
Overheard muttering about Tanchico. Yeah.
So she's like, well, that worked.
I have Moraine thinking that Nynaeve and Elaine's voyage might eventually tell her about her suspicions of the Windfinders were correct. And they are, Moraine.
Yes, they are.
They're channelers.
and the girls will certainly find that out. Good plan, I guess. Just sort of throws people into a situation and hope that it turns out the right way.
See more of her thinking about things. I'm not sure how much I want this to touch on. She thinks that the information they got from the Black Aja members that they interrogated is more likely true and more important. The stuff about Mazrim Tame being freed by the Black or by the Shadow is more likely to be true than the trouble in Tanchico. What Moraine doesn't know yet is that they're both true, and Mazrim Tame is already free.
Yeah, it's too late for the messages. They don't get there in time. I think I was actually reading some timeline stuff, and it looks like the pigeons are sent maybe a day or two before Taim is actually freed, which isn't enough time for them to get there before the Amerlin seat and have her react to them. So I guess there's an official timeline, and someone posted clarifying that bit because we were wondering about that on a previous episode.
Devin is asking, I never understood how Windfinders evaded detection for so long, more or less.
Yeah, there's
They're
no
in
Aes Sedai
the
ever came on
ocean.
the ships, first of all.
Aes Sedai aren't allowed on the ships.
No, they were refused passage. And none of the Windfinders ever stepped foot on
They know
the
to hide.
ground. Yeah.
And there aren't so many of them. Hundreds, maybe.
And anyone who couldn't channel just attributes the speed of the ship to, sea folk engineering. They don't think that, there's channeling going on to make the ship go that fast.
And the Seafolk engineering of ships is way better. They build their ships way better. They're advanced technologically, but also powered by magic.
Totally. And also, with the Sea Folks sending their weakest women to the White Tower, the assumption was, genetically, this group of people just doesn't channel very well. So, we get a few, and they're very weak, and that's all they've got.
But those women are actually sacrifices.
Right. And they get a chance to go home once the treaties are made between the Sea Folk and the White Tower and Egwene.
If you're standing on the beach somewhere and you looked out into the sea and saw channeling happening or felt it happening somewhere in the distance on the ocean, it would stand to reason that perhaps the Windfinders are channelers. But you would have to understand their culture, and you'd have to know the term Windfinder and what that is.
Well, and I just don't. I think the sea is a big place. You might be able to fill up the sky horizon to horizon, and still there might not be any ships that can see that.
And if someone on the coast looking out at the ocean perchance saw the channeling of a Windfinder, there's not much you would know. There's a woman somewhere 100 miles away channeling. It could be an Aes Sedai.
And Moraine does suspect, so it's possible that something was given away, something in her eyes and ears, some piece of information got back to Moraine that made her suspect that there were channelers on those boats.
I see how you could work it out, and Moraine has. I just think it's rare that anyone cares to. And I mean, the Aes Sedai don't even go looking in villages. They don't even test young girls everywhere. They could be doing that easily.
1,000 Aes Sedai is a drop in the bucket. There's so few of them. It's amazing that they find anybody, to be honest. It's a tiny, tiny population. And a good number of them just never leave the tower.
I want to note more while we're in Moraine's head. She also has the thought that she hopes she'll be able to keep Rand from rushing back to save his village. Little does she know that he and Perrin have already formulated a plan.
Yeah, Perrin's basically on his way out
Perrin
already.
And Matt have already discussed this and decided what's going to happen.
Totally.
Moraine just has no idea.
And she gets pissed that Rand hides that from her a little bit later.
I also liked that as she's having that thought, she looks over at Matt, and he grins at her, and she calls it a rudely defiant grin.
I like how Matt's grins from his perspective are always like charming or nice, and from everyone else it's like a leer or rudely
I'll
defiant.
give her my most charming grin, and then they're all like, what's he hiding?
A little bit before that, she's thinking about the fact that maybe Egwene can learn something from the Wise Ones. And she thought about the letter. That had been the most astounding letter from them. Not that she could afford to heed most of it. And of course, what it said was, we're going to meet you today on the slopes of Chain Dar.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, that's ridiculous. There's no way I can heed that. That's just not possible. And it's
then
not
they did.
until Rand brings up the portal stones that she's like, oh, that's what's going on. And so a lot of what Rand is doing, Moraine has faith that it's going to work out because she got basically this foretelling of dreams from the wise ones.
Right.
So she puts up a sort of a little bit too much of a protest just to try and talk Rand out of it. And then once he's like, no, it's definitely there, she's like, all right, let's do it because I think we're going to make it.
And we haven't seen it yet, but Rand is holding the fat man on Griel.
Totally.
The Buddha. The Jade Buddha.
And he mentions that he does get it when he was down looking for the red stone Terangrial. So
Yeah.
I hold by my theory that it was one of the things that Matt turned over on the barrel, that Matt's luck uncovered it, and then Rand saw it.
Maybe. All Rand says is, I saw the sword, and so I picked it up, and then I knew what it was.
Sure. And it was definitely in the storeroom. But
Yeah.
my headcanon is that he wouldn't have seen it if Matt hadn't disturbed the barrel
I like
and the
it.
stuff on the barrel. No way to prove it, just some headcanon there.
Moraine and Egwene wondering where Perrin is. They don't know yet that he's left.
No, off to the Two Rivers.
He's galloping away at this very moment.
Well, and yeah, as soon as the bell rings, he starts taking off.
Then he starts really sprinting.
Yeah. Then he's like, no, getting out of here.
Moraine says Fail has been trying to talk him into leaving. Egwene says, I like Fail. She's good for him. There's a lot of back and forth between Egwene and Moraine, but those were the highlights that I pulled out of it.
Moraine thinks about Lan needs a talking to because he seems to be shifting alliances over to the Two Rivers folks. But at least, there's a connection to Rand. Yeah, a few other little just like Moraine plotting in her head basically about what she's going to do and how she's going to control Rand. Moraine thinks about how the fact that she totally missed the 3 Taviran. We mentioned that before, and how important it was that there were 3 of them and not just the Dragon Reborn. Because she's been hunting the Dragon Reborn her whole life.
And they're
then
all
suddenly-
needed.
Yeah, and suddenly there's 3 Taviran. Like, the prophecies don't mention them, don't mention companions. We know, of course, the prophecies do mention the Wolf King and the Gambler and stuff like that, but she doesn't know those are companions and other Taviran from the same village as Rand. And then the one other thing before that is Fael has been keeping secrets from Perrin, which we know is the fact that she's the daughter, or the daughter to the uncle of the queen, third in line to the throne.
Right.
And Moraine's like, I know that. I could have a talk and be like, listen, if you don't want Perrin to know this, you're going to do what I say. Just Game of Houses all the way down. That's all I'm saying. It's Game of Houses.
I don't think that would work on Fael, dude. She'd be like, oh, you're going to tell him? Tell him.
Well, sure. But
Later.
Moraine is thinking about how to manipulate folks.
Yeah. Oh, of course she is. But I just don't think that kind of manipulation would work on Fael very well at all. She would be so indignant. I don't think that she could be manipulated.
Probably.
Okay. So Moraine and Egwene, standing in a crowd, have this long conversation where all these things come up. And then the crowd gave way hurriedly, more than eagerly. Those in front ruthlessly forcing those behind farther back, opening a wide passage to the space beneath the dome. Rand strode down that corridor, looking straight ahead. Imperious in a red coat, embroidered with golden scrolls up his sleeves, cradling Kalendor in his right arm like a scepter. It was not only that he made the Terrans give way, though. Behind him came perhaps 100 Aiel, spears and arrow-knocked bows in hand, Shufa wrapped around their heads, black veils hiding everything but their eyes. Moraine thought she recognized Ruark at the front, just behind Rand, but only by the way he moved. They were anonymous, ready for killing. Plainly, whatever he meant to say, Rand intended to quell any resistance before it had a chance to coalesce. The Aiel halted, but Rand kept on until he centered under the dome. Then ran his eye around the gathering. He seemed surprised, and perhaps upset, at the sight of Egwene, but he gave Moraine an infuriating smile, and Matt one that made the pair of them look like they were boys when Matt returned it. The Terrans were white-faced, not knowing whether to stare at Rand and Kalendor or the veiled Aiel, Either could be death in their midst. The High Lord Ch21, Rand said suddenly and loudly, making that plump fellow jump, has guaranteed me a treaty with Mayenne. Strictly following lines I gave him, he has guaranteed this with his life. He laughed as if he had made a joke, and most of the nobles laughed with him, not Ch21, who looked distinctly ill. If he fails, Rand announced, he has agreed to be hanged, and he will be obliged. The laughter stopped. Ch21's face took on a sickly tinge of green. Egwene gave Moraine a troubled glance. She was gripping her skirt with both hands. Moraine only waited. He had not brought every noble within 10 miles together to tell them of a treaty or a threat to a fat fool. She made her hands let go of her own skirts. Rand turned in a circle, weighing the faces he saw. Because of this treaty, ships will soon be available to carry Terran grain west, to find new markets. There were a few appreciative murmurs at that, quickly stifled. But there is more. The armies of Tyr are to march. A cheer rose, tumultuous shouts ringing from the ceilings. Men capered, even the High Lords, and shook their fists over their heads, and tossed up peaked velvet hats. Women, smiling as rapturously as the men, bestowed kisses on the cheeks of those who would go to war, and delicately sniffed the tiny porcelain bottles of smelling salts no Terran noblewoman would be without, pretending to be made faint by the news. Ilion shall fall, someone cried, and hundreds of voices seized it like thunder. Ilion shall fall! Ilion shall fall! Ilion shall fall! 3 times. It's a little excessive, I know. Moraine saw Egwene's lips moving. The words crushed beneath the jubilation. She could read them, though. No, Rand. Please, no. Please don't. On the far side of Rand, Mat was frowning in disapproving silence. They and she were the only ones not celebrating, aside from the ever-watchful Aiel and Rand himself. Rand's smile was twisted contemptuously, and never touched his eyes. There was fresh sweat on his face. She met his sardonic stare and waited. There would be more, and not, she suspected, to her liking. Rand raised his left hand. Slowly quiet fell, those in front anxiously shushing those behind. She waited for absolute silence. The armies will move north, into Cairhien. The High Lord Melan will command, and under him, the High Lords Gwaiem, Arcombe, Hearn, Marcon, and Simon. The armies will be generously financed by the High Lord Torian, the wealthiest among you, who will accompany the armies to see that his money is spent wisely. Dead silence greeted this pronouncement. No one moved, though plain-faced Torians seemed to be having trouble standing. Brutal.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to do stuff and none of it you will like. Flips off everyone, and then portal stones out.
Do what I want. So a couple of things there. First of all, the way he laughs when he says the High Lord Ch21 has guaranteed it with his life is a little insane. Just going to point that out.
He's losing his mind.
Yeah, I think he's a little insane. And I'm just, randomly cackling when you say, and he's guaranteed it with his life. Everyone else is like, ooh.
Well, everybody else, they all chuckle with him until he says, he has agreed to be hanged.
Yeah, and then they're like, oh, you're serious. That's...
Shall he fail?
That's bad.
Yeah.
Second, all of that grain ends up going to what? Cairhien and Ilion? And I think one of the reasons that Ilion bows down so easily to his will, and once he kills Samael, someone yelled at me about that on, I got a message on, I think, Instagram or something like that. Having trouble with it. Samael.
Two words. No. You're skipping a syllable. Sama, apostrophe.
Sama?
L.
Samael.
Samael.
Okay. Anyway, part of the reason that once he falls, Rand is able to take Ilion so easily is because he's been shipping them food. And part of what makes it... They're like, oh, yeah, this guy's been giving us food. We'll bow down right to him because all this food's been coming from Tyr. And that, more than anything else, wins him those spaces, Cairhien and Ilion. There's no need to conquer it.
I just looked that up to double-check myself. It's Samael.
That's okay. Samael.
We'll probably never get this 100% correct. Sorry, not sorry, everyone.
Well, I just can't wait till the TV show comes out and totally changes all the pronunciations into something very, very different than we've either used in the audiobooks or are the correct pronunciations in the back of the books. They're going to use like a third whole set of pronunciations, and then there's going to be a whole debate between the book people and the TV people about what the right way to pronounce all the words are going to be.
Yes, Leia, words are hard, but imaginary words are even worse.
Right. Especially when the person who invented them actually hasn't decided how they're pronounced right up front.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't really care how it's pronounced.
There is a key in the back, but the key says Samael. Samael. So it's not Sama, it's Samael. Whatever. Moving forward.
So Rand, instead of starting a war with Ilian, is sending his troops for, Hearts and Minds up in Kyrian?
Well, just to literally feed people. Rand's smile was twisted contemptuously and never touched his eyes. As all the lords and ladies are cheering, they're like, yay, we're going to war with our bitter enemies, blah, blah, blah. Rand is smirking at them. He knows that they're going to hate all of his decisions.
Of course
but he doesn't care. It's like, you will do this or I will come back. And I will come back. So you had better hope it's done by the time I get there, which is why he leaves Kalandor. It's like, you are going to do these things, and then finally, at the end of this, he slams Kalandor into the ground, and he's like, I will come back for this. And if I come back, and shit isn't the way I said it's going to be, people are going to die.
And Tyr is very much a class system in a way that very few other societies have an incredible striation between the rich and their poor. And these nobles don't even see the commoners as real people. And Rand is in here basically as a commoner ruling over them, being like, no, you can't overly tax the farmers and kill them very much. Like, it's this just incredible oppressive system. And here we have someone who's trying to make it a much more democratic, equal society.
I feel like Matt is a lot more amicable about it, but it's like that scene when he's playing cards with the High Lord's sons, and one of them makes some crack about farmers' daughters, and Matt's like, my sister's a farmer's daughter. What the fuck did you just say?
Like, what do you say?
Except much nicer than that.
That's actually the son of the High Lord Torian here, who's the one who's going to finance the saving of Kyrian.
Yeah.
It's his son.
What, that's the one that said it, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Because he was the rich one.
Yeah, or the richest amongst them.
Here she's like, Tom Maryland had given him good advice in terms of like arranging all these people. She must have missed some of the notes he's got. I think she also missed that he's getting good advice from Elaine.
Yeah, he has gotten a lot of good advice from Elaine and Tom.
So I'm wondering how much of that, maybe he just figured that out on his own also. She may be underestimating Rand's cleverness at this point.
Yeah, we see here, I think in a moment, but Rand makes a couple of more pronouncements, and Moraine's like, oh, I'm not sure why he's doing that. And then he makes another pronouncement, and she's like, oh, I must have missed some of the letters. My spies must have missed some of the letters that Tom had slipped into Rand's pockets. Because you remember, like, the ladies that were making, like, setting out Rand's wardrobe or whatever and cleaning it would leave him notes in the pockets, and that was all
Totally.
Tom. Yeah. To instructions on, like, yo, this one's gunning for you.
Look out for so-and-so. Oh, I found out these... Oh, and, like, the meetings that he would show up to, Tom would, like, let him know, like, hey, there's a meeting taking place. And he'd just walk in and be like, I'm here! And they'd be like,
guys?
Holy fuck.
Just hanging out, chatting.
Yeah.
Everyone's silent.
Have you talking about anything?
Anything you want me to know about?
Yeah.
No?
Treason? Little treason? Yeah, you're doing some treason? You're doing some treason? You looking treasonous over there. Looking good in that suit.
So good, it's treasonous. We have Rand's explanation kind of over the next page, like why you're going to Kyrian. He does explain.
And they're like, it's a quagmire. Why? We don't want to go there. And he's like,
yes, it is, and you're going to fix it.
And they're like, oh, well, you're going to be the king. And he's like, no. I know who's going to sit on the sun throne, and it's not me.
And it's not you either.
No. And we know it's Elaine.
Right. Who eventually makes a big stink about it, and she's like, "You cannot give me the Sun Throne."
No, she's
I have to take
totally okay with being given the Sun Throne in Kyrian.
What?
She doesn't want the Lion Throne in Andor.
Oh well, she's serious about that.
Yeah, but no, she
I thought it was
totally.
both, though.
No. When she walks into Kyrian, she's like, "Yep, I'm here. The Dragon Reborn said it was mine.
But she has
I'll take it."
Are you sure?
Abso-fucking-lutely.
But she has a claim to it.
Yeah.
I mean, she would have had to fight a war to actually get it, but she does have a strong blood claim.
She does have but not the strongest.
Not as strong as, say, Moraine,
Right.
who could almost certainly rule Kyrian if she wanted to.
Yeah. But she wins the Andoran throne on her own. That's hers to win. The Kyrianan she's okay with being given. I know it seems totally against her personality, but really like she uses the band of the Red Hand.
Lord Milan yells out, "Why?" essentially. And Rand explains that you're not going there to conquer Kyrian, you're going there to restore order so that I can then seat someone else entirely onto the throne. This is what you will do.
Peacekeeping mission.
Or I will kill your leaders. I'll bring you back, and I'll send you again. He doesn't say all of that, but it's kind of what he's implying, I'm thinking.
Oh, yeah. He's like, you will do what I say, and I'll just kill you until you do what I say.
It's a very Art of War thing to do.
Yeah, he's very much, I feel like he's going ruthless at this point.
It's his only option. These people can't be reasoned with. He tried.
He did try. They do have some serious prejudices built in.
Yes, draconic entity. As we'll see Moraine noticing in the next couple of paragraphs, as Rand explains what's happening to them, Moraine realizes he's sending away all of his biggest enemies. All the people who are trying to kill him are going to Kyrian now to feed the people.
Right, and he's hoping that they're not able to basically gather power because they're foreigners and no one's going to trust them there.
And they also won't work together.
Right.
Which is ideal.
Moraine seems to think that Altima is going to be able to gather power while she's there. And I was wondering why the other ones aren't a problem, but Altima is.
As we see Moraine think earlier in this chapter, Tom had focused on all the men in the plot that we heard about that he was involved in, where like two of the guys were trying to kill Rand, but like one of the guys was sleeping with the other guy's wife, so Tom like played them against each other, so like one was dead and the other's poisoned and laying in bed and dying, being tended by the wife who hates him or something like that.
But that's Altima, right? So
that's Altima.
Yeah.
And Rand is sending Altima away and leaving the husband in the care of her mortal enemy.
Right. So that's how he's able to basically control her, is by leaving her husband that she was going to poison in the hands of her mortal enemy. It's essentially creating an alliance against Altima, which is her husband and this other woman.
It's she says, after some prompting from Rand, of course, "It will please me greatly to serve the Lord Dragon," and "I'm sure it would," Rand said wryly, "as much as you love your husband. You'll not want him with you in Kyrian. Conditions will be hard for a sick man. I took the liberty of having him moved to the High Lady Astanda's apartments. She will care for him while you are away, and send him to meet you in Kyrian when he is well." Astanda smiled, a tight smile of triumph. Altima's eyes rolled back in her head, and she crumpled into a heap. She falls onto the floor.
Yeah, well, she faints.
She will be lucky to make it out of this alive.
Totally. Because her husband, who knows she's going to kill her.
She poisoned him?
Yeah.
Yes.
He wept when he found out.
He killed her lover, and so she poisoned him, and said that she would stay by his side until he recovered or died, and he would obviously die.
And I think her lover was Astanda's husband. Is that right?
Oh, I thought he was with Astanda. I can't keep track of this shit.
This is Game of Houses shit. So so there's four people, right?
Where's Tom when you need him?
I know. There's Altima and her husband, and Astanda and her husband.
And I think Altima's husband was cheating with Astanda because the other guy was assassinated.
Yes.
So I think it was Astanda's husband was cheating with Altima.
Yeah.
Astanda's husband was cheating with Altima. Altima's husband killed him in a hunting accident.
Right. After a note from Tom was found.
And then he returns injured or something. And
he falls sick as soon as he eats something that Altima makes for him.
That's it. Yes, he falls sick when he comes home after being served food by Altima, and Altima vows that she'll keep him alive as long as she can and save his life. She'll stay by his bedside the whole time. And he wept. We heard this.
Yes.
He wept when he heard that she would be taking care of him. So Rand is messing it all up now. He's saying that Astanda, your enemy, is going to take care of the man who, yes. So good luck staying alive.
These two married couples went at each other, and now he's crossing them.
I believe the point of this whole thing, and the reason Tom encouraged Rand to continue this, and Tom started it himself, is to sow discord amongst Rand's enemies. It's not necessarily for any particular goal. It's to have them at each other's throats so wildly that they don't have any time to slip a knife into Rand's back.
And these are the nobles who are his enemies. These aren't the nobles who are supporting him.
Yes, that's right. These are all his enemies.
Yeah.
They're all people who have been plotting against him.
Torian Estion, Torian's eldest son, was the lumpy-faced guy who Matt was gambling with, the drunk one. So
that's Torian's son, but the Torian in this scene is Torian the Elder.
Estion does say something here. With you to lead
does?
us, my lord dragon, we shall conquer the world. That's the son.
With you to lead us, my lord dragon, we shall conquer the world, a lumpy-faced young man shouted, half supporting Torian. Estion, Torian's eldest son. The lumpy-faced resemblance was clear, though the father was still mumbling to himself. Jerking his head up, Rand appeared startled, or perhaps angry. I will not be with you. I am going away for a time. That certainly brought silence again. Every eye was on him, but his attentions were all on Kalendor. The crowd flinched as he lifted the crystal blade before his face. Sweat rolled down his face, much more sweat than before. The stone held Kalendor before I came. The stone should hold it again, until I return. Suddenly, the transparent sword blazed in his hands. Whirling it hilt uppermost, he drove it down, into the stone floor. Bluish lightning arced wildly toward the dome above. The stone rumbled loudly, and the stone shook, dancing, heaving screaming people from their feet. Moraine pushed Egwene off her, while tremors still reverberated through the chamber, and scrambled erect. What had he done? And why? Going away? It was the worst of all her nightmares. The Aiel had already regained their feet. Everyone else lay stunned or huddled on hands and knees, except for Rand. He was on one knee, both hands holding Kalendor's hilt. With the blade driven halfway into the floor stones, the sword was clear crystal again. Sweat glistened on his face. He pried his hands away, one finger at a time, held them cupped around the hilt, yet not touching it. For a moment, Moraine thought he was going to take hold of it again, but instead, he forced himself to his feet. He did have to force himself. She was certain of it. Look at this while I am gone. His voice was lighter, more the way it had been the first time she found it in his village, but no less sure or firm than it had been moments before. Look at it, and remember me. Remember I will come back for it. If anyone wants to take my place, all they have to do is pull it out.
Yeah, and combat all the inverted spells and traps that he has around it.
He waggled a finger at them, gritting almost mischievously. But remember, the price of failure. Turning on his heel, he marched out of the chamber, the Aiel falling in behind him. Staring at the sword rising out of the floor of the heart, the Terrans got to their feet more slowly. Most looked ready to run, but too frightened to.
And we have a sword in the stone, literally driven down into the stone.
And whoever pulls it will be a king of something or other.
Well, not really.
Well, you know, a bunch of male channelers, I guess.
I suppose. So, why do you think the stone gets shook so badly? You know, he could drive that stone into the ground without shaking the entire fortress and causing, like, massive waves.
Dramatic effect?
I think what he's doing is he is setting all the traps to go around the sword, And so he channels through the sword, and we see that because it blazes.
That's why I believe he's sweating.
Yeah.
He's channeling.
He's
the
channeling.
whole time.
But
Yeah.
we know that channeling through Kalendor causes issues. And so I'm wondering if, A, he's a little uncontrolled because he's a new channeler, and B, if there's maybe the insanity of Kalendor, of I can do anything, is causing him to just give off all sorts of extra energy that creates the vibrations.
I'm going to agree with Herod Fell here and say it's because he's just sloppy. He's doing a lot of very complicated things, and nobody does get Kalendor, which says something.
Sure.
That nobody was able to undo this trap. Nobody's able to get this incredible tool. So that the traps work.
Yeah. And I think when he's holding his hands, he's cupping them around the hilt and not touching it. I think that's when he's creating all the traps.
I take it. Yeah. I was kind of wondering what that was about. He peels each finger off, but he just leaves his hands around it.
Yeah. I think that's when he's like using all the various. He's inverting and creating all the traps around it. And so immediately, like his burden lightens once he gives up the sword. And he talks about that, how the burden of being able to do anything really does weigh him down. There's just too much power in the sword. If we're going to go with Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And by giving up that power, he's also able to give up some of the responsibility that was weighing him down.
I agree. I think it's better that he's away from it for him in the long run.
And as we find out that it has a corrupting effect on him. It does, it doesn't have the proper buffering that a Sangreal needs to have.
There's a little scene with the Aiel leaving and things like that. And Moraine has a thought, because this whole chapter is from Moraine's perspective. Moraine has a thought, and here's all I really wanted to highlight. The only thing I really wanted to read aloud was her, meaning Moraine, her informants and her own eavesdropping overheard nothing, and her network of eyes and ears would no longer try, not since one woman had been left bound and gagged, hanging by her ankles, from battlements, and staring wild-eyed at the 400-foot drop beneath her. And not since the man who had simply disappeared. The man was just gone. The woman, refusing to go higher ground than the floor, had been a constant reminder until Moraine sent her into the country. So Moraine has tried to spy on the Aiel to figure out what's happening there, and it did not work.
No. They don't like being spied on.
They caught the first couple, and they were so terrified to ever... Well, one disappeared, and no one knows where he went. He's just gone forever.
Probably just ran
And the other
away.
one was left tied by her ankles, dangling from the battlements of the castle that is the stone, 400 feet above the air, until someone found her later. I would imagine... I don't think that the Aiel would have killed him.
I don't think so. I think they just would have terrified him that he
I think they probably scared him so badly and told him to leave here and never come back. And if I ever see you again, here's what I'll do. Because they're not unreasonable people.
Unless he happened to be spying on one of the Dark Friend Aiel.
Maybe. We don't know that there's any Dark Friend Aiel here.
But we do know there are Dark Friend Aiel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's Dark Friend everybody.
Matt dates one.
Yeah. We all go on a bad date or two in our lives. It's no big deal. Haven't had any tried to kill me yet, but you never know.
She was into crystals and the Dark One and Herbalife and totally worshipped Ishmael.
She kept talking about glory. It was weird. She was gorgeous, but I had to get away from that. Think of the glory, Rand. Have you seen the memes going around on the what is it, over-attached ex-girlfriend?
Yes.
With think of the glory, Rand, and that's that's it.
We did that during a episode. It was great.
Am I naming that meme right? Over-attached ex-girlfriend? That's it. That's what it is, right?
I'm not sure it's X. I'm not sure. I think it's just over OAG, over-attached girlfriend.
Oh, over-attached girlfriend?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was over-attached ex-girlfriend. Overly attached girlfriend,
yeah.
Says Cody. I believe you.
She wouldn't let herself become your ex, is pretty much how it It's like, I want to break up with you. No. Did you see that episode of Seinfeld?
Yeah. No, that's not how that... No, you're not breaking up with me.
we're not breaking up.
But you don't...
The Aiel, I noticed they're very uncomfortable around Moraine, and she wonders how can they be uncomfortable around her while following Rand. And it's like, well, you're Aes Sedai. And like, they're not uncomfortable around channeling. They're uncomfortable around Aes Sedai specifically.
Yes. It's a cultural thing. Egwene is going to the Wastes. Moraine knows about that. She does not know that Rand is going to the Wastes as well. They're both going to Ruidian.
For very different reasons. Egwene's going there because Amis has summoned her. Rand is going there because he needs to become a clan chief and get the Aiel on his side.
Yeah.
I don't think he has any prophecies about Ruidian, though, unlike Matt.
I don't think so. I think it's more about the people of the dragon.
Yeah. Because he doesn't say anything about, when he comes out, I think Matt says, oh, maybe they tell everyone to go to Ruidian. And he was like, that's not what they told me. So we know that Rand wasn't told to go to Ruidian in the Portal Gateway.
Rand knows that in order to truly, I don't want to say control or conquer, but in order to lead these people, he has to be named the Karakarn. And in order to be named the Karakarn, he has to go and do this thing.
Yeah.
He has to go to the Waste and do this thing. And then he will control the most dangerous army on the planet. I mean, I still believe they're more dangerous than the Shan-Chan.
The Aiel?
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that Shan-Chan have going for them is the zombie thing is like when they take down a channeler and they can chain them and make them one of their own. And then you have to fight your own channelers. And that I feel like is really what makes them very hard to beat, is that the more places they conquer, the more channelers they get. The more channelers they get, the more powerful they become. And there's this sort of like feedback loop of like you can send your channelers up against them and they're just going to capture them and take them over and use them against you.
Yeah. Even in the alternate reality, it takes like many generations for the Shan-Chan to eventually overcome the Aiel, right?
Sure, and that's not their only advantage. They also have like steam engines and guns and
shock lances at that point.
Yeah,
or guns, maybe. I guess you could interpret that way. I saw it as shock lances, but I also see shock lances as magic guns, basically. So
sure,
they're a gun run by magic that a non-magic user can use. That's what I think. I don't think I don't know where I'm getting that from now that I say it out loud.
I like that they're basically laser guns. They're basically blasters.
Blasters from Star Wars.
Yeah, totally.
Can't hit anything, but they sure do scare people, I guess.
The wheel turns. Who's to say Star Wars wasn't one turning of the wheel? Luke is Rand al'Thor, reborn. Use the one power, Luke.
Rand. He's not your father.
Or if we can go with the Harry Potter, you're a wizard, Rand.
You're a channeler, Rand al'Thor. All right, forward.
Just see Moraine showing up with like crazy hair on a motorcycle, flying motorcycle.
Yeah, or it could be land,
Yeah, well, he'd be riding shotgun.
Probably. You're a channeler, Rand al'Thor.
In the sidecar. I can just imagine Lan with his sword in the sidecar, like grumpy.
And by the way, a lot of people want to kill you. That's basically how both stories start.
Of course Moraine's driving. There's no way Lan's driving the motorcycle.
Lan is not driving.
No.
Moraine's the brains.
Yeah. He's definitely in the sidecar.
Lan is the darkness. He is the night. Lan is Batman.
Batlan?
Batlan. Next thing I have is Moraine saying, oh, hey, yeah, by the way, you forgot this one thing. See, the channelers of old came up with these incredible traps and things so that only you could draw this out of the stone. You don't know how to do that. Anyone could just come take the sword now. And Rand's like, I'd like to see him try. And he almost literally, I almost hope they'll try, he says. A threatening light shone in his eyes. They seemed gray storm clouds. So Rand leaves a ton of traps that he hopes someone will try to spring, which speaks of a ton of confidence.
Well, and it'll kill his enemies, right?
Yeah. And we know that Rand is not an overconfident person. He's not like that.
Do we want to talk about this prophecy? This little into the heart he thrusts his sword?
Yeah.
Into the heart to hold their hearts. Who draws it out shall follow after. What hand can grasp that fearful blade?
Logain's.
No, Logain never touches it.
I thought it was Logain.
Nope. Narishma.
Oh, okay. Other Ashaman.
It's different Ashaman. I'm also debating whether or not Narishma is the one this is referring to. I don't know. It's one of those prophecies that I don't really think ever applies.
She'll follow after?
What does that
mean?
mean?
What does that mean?
Yeah.
He follows Rand and gives him the sword.
I guess.
That's what happens.
What hand can grasp that fearful blade? Well, who grabs the blade? Nobody.
It's just like kind of a regular dude.
Yeah.
Actually. That's whose hand.
So here's my alternate theory. When it says, who draws it out shall follow after, it's not talking about drawing it out of the heart of stone. I think it's talking about Moradin. I think it's saying Moradin's the one who picks it up during the last battle, and he's the one who follows after the last battle. Who's the one who comes after? Moradin. Rand inhabits his body. So, just off the wall idea is that this actually refers to Rand taking over Moradin and becoming part of his body during the last battle. That's a stretch, but I just don't like the fact
better than
that
anything I can come up
it
with.
doesn't. I don't like the Narishma prophecy.
I don't really like it either.
No, so I'm trying to think of how does it apply.
That fearful blade. Oh, it's
Yeah.
just kind of this regular dude who's not that special.
Yeah.
It's like a B, C, Theta character.
So that's where I'm saying what hand can grasp that fearful blade. I immediately go to Moradin during the last battle, who picks it up and uses it.
And it is important that Moradin picks up.
It's incredibly
Calendar.
important. Incredibly. I mean, that is the key to being able to use the true power to seal off the Dark One without corrupting either half of the one power or both halves. So
Rand needs to be able to channel all three powers.
The fact that Kalendor is this true power sangreal really makes me think that this is, it's misinterpreted as Narishma because he's the one who pulls it out of the heart of stone. But I think these two stanzas are actually separate. You have the first one, into the heart he thrusts the sword, in the heart to hold their hearts. Sure, totally refers to him putting it in the stone. But then you have this, who draws it out shall follow after. We assume that refers to drawing it out of the stone. I don't think so. I think that refers to the last battle, drawing it out.
The Chosen like your theory.
Yeah.
There are no dissenters.
Something to keep an eye on. Let's see if we can build up some more evidence around that.
Yeah, that's one of the prophecies out there that never really made sense to either of us. And Seth and I have talked about we've had a couple of conversations about that one blurb there.
Yeah.
And I have never been able to come to any conclusion.
What hand can grasp that fearful blade is what got me thinking. Because I've always read the line, who draws it out shall follow after, as the important line. But it's the one after that. What hand can grasp that fearful blade? Well, who actually wields it?
Narishma just pulls it out and delivers it.
Exactly. Whereas Moradin,
he's a messenger boy.
What hand can grasp that fearful blade? Remember, Moradin stabs his own hand to make Rand drop the blade and then picks it up with him
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right, DT. Doesn't Narishma try to not ever touch it even? He delivers it wrapped in a blanket. Narishma.
Yeah, and he's kind of pissed that Rand doesn't tell him about all the traps on it.
Wait, what?
Oh, at that point, Rand's in full-on Darth Rand mode, and even though he sends Narishma to get it for him, he doesn't fully trust him, so he actually doesn't tell him about all the traps, and Narishma nearly dies, because Rand's a dick. Darth Rand's a dick at that point. Oh, that's right. So Cody's saying that Narishma uses it in the battle near Shadow Logoth in a circle. So, I mean, I guess he does grasp it, but it's definitely not definitive, but I'm putting it out there that I think this may refer to the last battle in Moradin, rather than Narishma.
I like new debates.
So at the end, he says, I'm not giving up Kalendor forever, just until I... And then he stops himself. What do you think that was? And then a little bit later, Moraine thinks to herself, he had been intending to say something other than, until I come back. But what?
Lead the Aiel out of the waste until I
like Margot's suggestion.
Have to fight the Dark One?
Until I need it to cleanse the source. Because his initial plan was to use Kalendor to cleanse the source until he finds out about its flaw. And he doesn't have the Choden Call keys yet.
Right.
I have no ideas there, so I was actually just going to ask folks.
I kind of want to say that Rand doesn't get the idea for how to cleanse the source until the battling wounds in his side.
That's true. Yeah. So it's a little bit early for him to be coming.
That doesn't mean that he's not trying to figure it out right now, but he doesn't get.
And he did ask, one of his questions is in the doorway was, how do I cleanse the source? So that's definitely on his mind.
Yeah, I mean, it would be on mine if I was there.
I 100%. Okay, yeah, I'm headcanoning the fact that he's thinking about, like, until I use it to cleanse the source. That's totally what I'm thinking. And then he reveals that he's going to Ruidion, and that's probably in the readout.
Moraine speaking. And where are you going? Or do you mean to keep it a mystery? She was quietly vowing not to let him escape again, to turn him somehow, if he meant to go running off to the 2 rivers, when he surprised her. Not a mystery, Moraine. Not from you and Egwene, anyway. He looked at Egwene and said one word. Ruidion. Wide-eyed. The girl appeared as astounded as if she had never heard the name before. For that matter, Moraine felt scarcely less. There was a murmur among the Aiel, but when she glanced back, they were striding along with no expressions whatsoever. She wished she could make them leave, but they would not go at her command, and she would not ask Rand to send them away. It would not help her with him to ask favors, especially when he might well refuse. You are not an Aiel clan chief, Rand, she said firmly, and you have no need to be one.
Actually, yes, you do.
Your struggle is on this side of the Dragon Wall, unless... Does this come from your answers in the Terengrial? Cairhien and Kalendor and Ruidion? I told you those answers can be cryptic. You could be misunderstanding them, and that could prove fatal to more than you. You must trust me, Moraine, as I have so often had to trust you. His face might well as have been belonged to an Aiel for all she could read it. I will trust you for now. Just do not wait to seek my guidance until it is too late. I will not let you go into the shadow, she thinks. I have worked too long to allow that. Whatever it takes.
Even if it involves tackling Lanfear through a gateway and dying.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever it takes. And just a quick reminder, the 3 questions that Rand asks in the doorway are: how can I win the last battle and survive? How do I cleanse Saidin? And how do I kill the Dark One?
Was that the first noise from Timber the whole episode?
Yeah, he was asleep on the bed. Now he's pestering me.
Timber.
He can't actually hear you, you know.
Oh, right. I guess I'm just playing right into your ear.
Yeah.
No, I was trying to get him to react.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. He literally cannot hear you. And his name's Timber, not Tiger, folks. I'm really going to kill Ryder for starting that.
You can spell it Temba, which is the way I like to say it to him.
Temba.
But we wanted to thank some people first.
Oh yeah, I think with just the holidays coming up, there's been a couple of people who have either sent us things or have been very nice lately, so I wanted to say thank you. First of all, to Kirk, who has sent us 2 brand new microphones.
Dude.
Fucking great.
Big boon.
Yeah, that was really well-timed. So if you're enjoying the quality of the sound that you're hearing, you can thank Kirk. Hopefully also let us send our 2 older microphones over to Aradia and Travis for what we hope will be a awesome podcast about the Broken Earth, as we do the Broken Earth Spoilers podcast.
In the works. I feel like we still have to do test runs and shit and try to get things going.
And I want to say thank you to Talir, who's here, for the cookies, because I ate the crap out of them. They were super good. There are none left.
I ate a couple of those.
I didn't get them all down before you got a chance to eat them, but I
managed
did
to
eat
pick
most
off
of
a
them.
couple.
Yeah. Patrick knows me. I'm so bad with cookies. If there's cookies in the house, I'm going to eat them. They just don't last.
It's bad because if someone mails us cookies, the box just lands on the living room table and it just stays there. So every time you walk by, you got to look at that box of cookies and be like, no. Keep walking.
Oh, We're supposed to say no?
I try to.
I don't.
The occasional failure is acceptable to me, you know. If I'm batting like 9 out of 10 times, I walked by, perfect. Team walk by.
Team walk, Jesus Christ, don't bring that shit up again.
The microphones, the cookies. I think we already thanked Christine out loud for sending us cookies like all the fucking time. Thank you, Christine. We appreciate all of you so much. Ogre Tendencies sent us a blown-up version of our original artwork for Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast to send to Rafe Judkins when they put out, the team over there put out a tweet to put art on their wall. I don't know if we called that out on the podcast.
Oh, yeah, that was fantastic. He had it all like set up so it was a prepaid envelope and everything. So all we had to do was like unpack it, sign it, repack it, and send it forward.
And slap the thing on there. It was already paid for.
It was awesome. So hopefully we're going to see the podcast artwork show up in the office of Rafe. And I messaged his assistant, and she responded and said that she was looking forward to find a place to put it. So we're pretty excited about that. Yeah. And that was all arranged by the fans.
And if we don't see it up on the wall, we can just like sick our Twitter community on them and be like, everyone ask them where the artwork is and why it isn't on the wall. Go.
Dude, the Twitter community is kind of out of control. It's really grown.
I don't even understand what happens anymore. I cannot keep up. It's like Discord now. I can only watch, like, I keep up with what happens with the Grey Aja channel and live recording shit. And I tune into the hall here and there, but the fact of the matter is, by the time I tune into the hall, usually, like, a problem has happened, and it's already been, like, debated and concluded, and an action has been done, and I'm just scrolling through it, being like, oh, yeah, good job. That's yeah.
I'm glad everyone got that done. Just wish everyone a Merry Christmas. It's coming up, or it probably already happened by the time you hear this.
Happy Hanukkah. Have a mediocre Festivus. Damn it.
And a hungover New Year.
A hungover New Year. A Merry Christmas. What's the one that has to do with the harvest? There's one. Yule. Have a good Yule.
Kwanzaa.
Have a freaking fabulous Kwanzaa. That's an understated one. Wait.
Beltane's in the spring.
Beltane's a springtime one. Yule is the winter solstice.
We just had solstice on the 21st. That was 2 days ago. So happy delayed solstice.
Yes, happy Beltane, Wiccans. We love all of you. We don't care what you do. As far as your, philosophical beliefs on how to conduct your life, whatever. As long as they're loosely based on the Wheel of Time, we're good.
Well, and since everything's loosely based on the Wheel of Time, I think that we're fine.
Margot says we forgot Saturnalia.
I do not know what that is.
Is that a Roman holiday?
Roman?
I mean, Saturn was a Roman god, so get drunk and eat. Well, that sounds familiar.
But that's what we do every day.
Sounds exactly like Christmas. And Thanksgiving.
What do you want to do today? Same thing we do every day. Get drunk and eat.
A lot of days. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of days.
You're loving fifth season, man. Broken Earth.
It's a seriously great series. Guys, all of you folks out there listening, if you haven't checked this out yet and you're looking for something really fun to read that's going to suck you right in and have you, you're upset when you have to put the book down and pay for your groceries or whatever it was you were doing while you were reading, check out the fifth season, or the Broken Earth series. The fifth season is the first book of the Broken Earth series, and it's only a trilogy. They're only 500 pages apiece, so listen, if you read this thing, you were going to rip through this and pretty quickly. And I am a pretty busy guy. I got 2 jobs and other obligations, and it's been like a week and a half since I bought the trilogy, and I'm my Kindle says I'm 40% done with the 3rd book.
And only 12 months of pestering you to get it done. No, but we got there. We got there eventually.
Yeah. and then I bought them, and it took me like 10 days to finish. With any luck tonight, typically have to work on Monday, but the restaurant's closed on Christmas Eve. So I'm going over to Julia's and we'll have dinner or whatever after this, hang out. And I'm thinking about taking the bus rather than faster transportation for the just for the only reason that it takes like way longer than anything else. But I can sit there for an hour and just read, and I should be almost done.
And once you finish, you're going to want to immediately restart and do a reread.
Goofball the other night, and I lost my freaking phone. I don't know what happened to it. I called the wine shop today that I was in. That I left there reasonably good. I wasn't wasted or anything. It's not there. And I talked to the dude that was there on Friday night, and he was like, no, nobody left anything here. And I called the Lyft services, and I got in contact with everyone. They were like, no phone. So I don't know what happened. If I like maybe stepped out of the car and the phone fell out of my pocket, and then somebody was like, some dumbass was like, oh, I'll sell this, except you can't sell used phones really anymore. I don't know what happened.
Maybe it just ended up in the car and someone just picked it up the next
It's
person
probably
that's in the
somewhere
car.
dumb. I probably like set a book on top of it and I won't know for another 10 months or something.
Or it's
I
in the
have no
apartment
idea.
somewhere and the phone, like the battery's dead at this point. And
Oh no, whatever.
Yeah.
But it was well over 2 years. I think it was over 3 years old now, and it was getting glitchy. It like if you put the headphones in, the audio will feed automatically into my ear, but if you take them back out, it doesn't know anymore. So you just have to reboot the phone if you want the speakers to work.
Jeez.
And I mean, I dropped it a bunch of times and cracked the screen. And when I cracked the screen, I'm sorry, I'm telling this really long story. I went to go buy a new case because the case was all broken and messed up from dropping it 1,000 times. And they were like, yeah, we don't sell that case anymore. That's a really old phone. So for the last couple of months, I've been like, well, one more good drop, one more mistake, some water or something. It's going to go. I've never had a phone last this long before. And it went, just not in the way I expected.
So what you're saying is you subconsciously were trying to get rid of that thing.
I guess so. I kind of want a new phone, guys.
Yeah. It seems to be what you're telling us is you wanted a new phone.
Just kidding. I threw it in the trash. Made up of the story. No, that's not true. It's an expensive purchase. I was hoping that it would last a good while longer.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty happy that I'm over 2 years now.
I've been saving this year. I'm doing all right, so I'll be able to get a new phone.
Yeah,
no problem. And the Verizon store opens early tomorrow, and I'm going to show up before they open. And the ones not in malls, and hopefully I won't have to wait in a line too long to buy a goddamn phone.
Yeah, don't go to the mall.
No,
It's a terrible
I'm going to go
place.
to the one down on MLK over here, like MLK and Broadway. It's kind of a store that's like in the middle of there's like a McDonald's next door and like some random junk. It's
Perfect.
I don't feel like people are going there to shop. You know what I mean?
Right. You're not going to end up with some stupid long line.
You go there because you have to. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Especially if you walk into a store and you're like, hey, I have money. I would like to purchase your products. It's usually not a problem.
I want to give you money. Okay.
Gosh. You and I were just talking about this the other night, but I have to reread that section of the series. The kind of like mid-late. Not the end, not the middle, but like in there, in the... I'm the least familiar. I've probably only read that part of the series like, a handful of times.
Book 11 changes a lot. Like, there's so many things that happen in the last of Jordan's book before Sanderson.
Yeah.
You really think of like Sanderson picking up and that's where things change. But book 11, there's so much going on.
I'm super familiar with the beginning and the end. I'm most familiar with the beginning and ends. I've read those sections the most times. The middle I tend to skip over a lot now that I've read the whole thing many times.
See, whereas right now the middle is where I'm really getting into like the good details. That's where all the interesting stuff happens to me, where we have all the various intrigues and Aes Sedai like scheming against each other and Game of Houses shit.
And I feel like you and I talk about this a lot because I think we're both excited to get to it, and we're moving forward. It's going to be a while, but we will get there. And I think we'll have a lot to talk about, and I think the reason that people consider it to be the slog, as so many people call it on the internet, is that there's so much happening, and there's so many B characters moving around and doing things that it's difficult to understand. You have to kind of power your way through. It's really hard to keep track of the all the different characters because they're all like B characters, like this and that, Aes Sedai, like this minor member of the Black Aja or something is doing. But if you understand who all the characters are and what their motivations are, it makes a really great story. But I think for a common reader in 1997, it was really difficult because you couldn't look this up on the internet. So you had to either know who Millie Skane is, or you have to remember that from 5 years ago, or you have to just power through, which I feel like is a lot of what I did. Like, you can kind of understand what's going on.
There was a lot. I mean, I knew there was characters moving around in the background that I didn't understand the first few times I read.
I definitely don't remember all, 87 on-screen Aes Sedai. No way. No, I don't.
No.
But now you can Google it.
And, well, at this point now, I've done so many read-throughs, and with the podcast, I actually do... It's amazing how few names come up that I'm like, I have no idea who that is. Now, for the most part, a name comes up, I'm like, yeah, I recognize
I can
them.
vaguely remember.
Yeah.
But doing the podcast helps a lot.
And if I don't, it's because they're only in that one scene.
It does help a lot that we sit here and talk about it after each chapter that we read.
Oh, God, how many hours have we put into this thing? Like, we have such an amazing basis from the first 3-4 books to understand. We've met a majority of the characters.
You know what I was thinking about today? How many hours did we put into sitting around talking about doing this podcast before we actually did it? Probably like 100.
Easily. And I mean, that doesn't even talk about all the conversations I had with Vino and all the conversations I had when I was lifeguarding, just in college and high school. Like,
I just argued with people on the internet a lot.
Yeah, all the internet reading we've done, all the actual reading of the books we've done, all the audiobook listening we've done. I do think about that sometimes. Like, there's no way I'll ever be able to be as much of an expert on anything as I am on the Wheel of Time. It's like I put more time into this series than I have in anything else in my life, by a lot.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah, with the exception of 9-to-5 jobs, I'm trying to think. There's probably a time in my life where I was working a 9-to-5 job and I was actually putting more time into the Wheel of Time.
Right. And nothing has been with me since I was 15. What else have I been doing regularly since I was 15? Nothing like this.
God, almost nothing. Drinking beer on the weekends, I guess.
I mean, have I put 10,000 hours into drinking beer? Probably, yes. But usually I'm reading at the same time. So
you were also, I would say you're a qualified expert in beer.
Me?
Yeah, you should be doing my job, really.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, maybe you could just sit at the bar and I can just, when someone asks me a question that I don't fully understand, I can just yell at you.
That'd be
you
fine.
Can tell me and I'll tell them.
If I could make a living doing that, I would absolutely just sit at the bar and drink and answer questions about beer.
I had a great thing happen the other day. So, total side note, this has nothing to do with anything. But the other day, and okay, so Grain and Gristle, unofficial tap house of Upright Brewing in Portland, Oregon. Great beer. The master brewer, this young guy, Alex, really nice dude, comes in probably about once a week, and it's partly his business. He owns like a third of it or something. I don't know exactly how it all works, but he owns like a third of the restaurant, but he owns the brewery. That's his jam.
And I've sat and talked to him. I've sat and drank and talked to him about beer for a while.
Yeah,
just because we both come into the bar.
Really
like,
nice
I didn't
guy.
realize he was the brewer at the time, but yeah, he's a really
and
nice
the other
guy.
day, he comes in probably about once a week, maybe a little more often than that, maybe a little less, depending. But he comes in, just drinks his own beer, orders some food, and then he just walks out because he owns the place, right? I love it.
He doesn't tip or anything?
He doesn't have to pay for that. It's his beer. He made it.
He literally did, yeah. And he's signing your paycheck, so, you know.
Yeah, he's sitting there drinking. And he's always really nice. I always bullshit with him if I have the time. And a couple comes in and sits down next to him. They have no idea who he is. He's just like a regular-looking dude wearing a flannel in Portland, right? Totally normal. And they start asking me all these questions about beer. And at some point, we got like deeper than I really need. And I just turn my face slightly to the side. I'm like, yo, Alex, You know the answer to this question? Like, what exactly defines the... I don't even remember what the question was now. And he was like, oh, yeah. And then he starts, like, talking their ear off, and I just turned around. I was like, I'm just going to go help these people.
Did they know he was
Alex
the one who made the
this
beer?
No, I never told them.
Oh, not even, like, after he left or anything?
Yeah, little did they know. They talked to the guy that... The master brewer of the brewery that made this one particular beer they had a lot of questions about. I doubt he did either, because he's just not the type. He's like a very unassuming...
Oh, yeah, no. I
nice,
talked to him
nerdy
for
guy. He's very quiet. Yeah.
While, and he never told me he was the brewer. He said he brewed beer, but he didn't say he brewed beer there.
Right.
And I was like, oh, you mean the beer I'm drinking? You made the beer I'm drinking. Oh.
Oh, you mean the beer that they sell here, right?
Yeah.
No, I don't think he likes that very much. I think he's just he likes making beer. That's what he wants to do.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to be some kind of celebrity or something.
He doesn't really want to talk to people. I mean,
No.
the only reason I engaged him is because I was talking about brewing beer, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm a brewer too," But like, that's not necessarily something he's not like.
Yeah. He's not like, by the way, and I have a successful company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unlike me, because I tell everyone that I'm running a Watt Spoilers podcast that I can possibly track down. So we're different in that way.
I feel like I'm kind of like Alex. It's not that I don't want to tell people. It's that I don't want to have to explain how that works, what it is, what we talk about. It's a lot to tell someone who will not understand.
Oh, well, see, I'm always looking for the people who do understand. That's what I'm really like. I'm testing someone to see if they at least understand what Game of Thrones is. And then once I get that, I can move on from there. It's what I do. It's what I care about. It's what I want to talk to people about, So I'm always bringing it up.
That's what I care about too, but for most people, they don't really understand exactly what we're doing. So I'll dumb it down a lot, and I'll be like, I run this podcasting and audio production company where we work on these things, and there are book clubs and things like that. And they're like, oh, cool, I kind of get it. If I lead with, like, have you ever heard of the Wheel of Time, the majority of people are going to be like, nah.
Well,
it's a conversation killer.
I guess I do kill the conversation like that. But I'm looking for the yes, right? Once I hear the yes, then it's a conversation starter. Then it's like, okay, well,
yeah, fair.
We're about to have a 3-hour conversation if you say yes to that. Oh, have you read the Wheel of Time? Yes. Okay. Sit down, grab a beer, hold your pants up, because we're about to go crazy.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?